There's still a dent in our dining room wall. It's not from anything violent. I'm not that kind of guy. It's from a chair I accidentally rammed into the plaster while trying to carry 3 bags of groceries, a laundry basket, and Lena's dry cleaning in one trip because she had a meeting in 12 minutes and couldn't be late again. I remember tripping over her stilettos in the hallway, stumbling sideways, and crack. The wall cracked before I did. Now that I think about it, that dent was probably the most honest thing in our house. Everything else, a curated performance. The perfect marble countertops. The relaxing, minimalist bedroom that felt like a hotel lobby. Her color-coded closet. My desk shoved into the corner by the laundry room. The whole house screamed, "Look how beautiful we are," but none of it felt like mine. I used to joke that I didn't need a spine. Lena made all the decisions for me anyway. She picked the furniture, the meals, the vacations, the friend groups. I just adjusted. Like wallpaper. There, but never really noticed. Still, I thought we were okay. I told myself that. A lot. Especially on nights when she came home late and didn't bother with an excuse. Or mornings when I woke up and realized she'd slept in the guest room again. I told myself all marriages go through rough patches. That I was being too sensitive. Too needy. Too me. But last Friday shattered that illusion in front of 20 people, under candlelight, with a jazz trio playing in the background. It was Brandon's birthday. Brandon is Lena's co-worker. She once said he was insufferable but effective, which I guess was her way of complimenting someone without sounding impressed. He rented out the rooftop of some boutique hotel, hired a private chef, and invited only the close circle. For some reason, I was on that list. The evening was pretentious in every imaginable way. One I couldn't pronounce. Micro portions of food arranged like modern art. Conversations that sounded like LinkedIn posts. I kept sipping my drink to avoid saying something awkward. Lena kept topping it off, smiling like I was her pet project. Then came the moment. Someone, I think it was Brandon, made a joke about who wears the pants in modern marriages. Lena laughed, a little too loudly. Then she turned to me, placed her hand on my shoulder like I was a piece of furniture she'd grown fond of, and said, "Oh, I told him a long time ago, either obey me or start packing." Just like that. And everyone laughed. The table burst out like it was the funniest line of the night. Even the waiter chuckled. And I sat there with my mouth half open and my soul halfway out of my body. I looked at Lena. She didn't even glance back. Just picked up her wine glass and took a slow sip like she hadn't just gutted me in public. It was humiliating. But the worst part? It wasn't even close to the most humiliating thing I'd discover that night. Because later, long after the laughter died down, long after we pretended everything was fine, I found something in her purse. Something that made everything else feel like a warm-up. We left the rooftop dinner in near silence. Just the tapping of her heels on the concrete and the low hum of her car engine filling the space between us. I didn't say a word. I couldn't. My brain kept replaying that moment at the table like some cruel loop. Her voice, sharp and amused. Either obey me or start packing. The way everyone laughed. The way she didn't even look at me after she said it. Like I wasn't a person, just the punchline to her evening. I sat in the passenger seat like a ghost of myself, hands folded, heart racing, stomach twisted. She hummed along to the music as if the night had gone perfectly. She even complimented the chef. I stared out the window and tried not to cry. Back at the house, she walked in, kicked off her shoes, and said she had to catch up on some messages. Of course she did. She always had something to catch up on. I told her I'd clean up the kitchen even though we didn't eat there. It was just easier to make myself small, stay out of her way. As I picked up her clutch from the counter to move it away from the sink, something dropped out. At first, I thought it was her work phone. But no, it was an older phone, one I didn't recognize. No case, screen slightly cracked. It buzzed once in my hand, and that's when I saw it. A message from someone saved as B. I'm not proud of what I did next, but I'm not going to pretend I hesitated. I opened the phone. No password. Either she was careless or confident I'd never find it. Probably both. The first thing I saw made my skin go cold. Same hotel next week. Room 904 was perfect last time. I scrolled. I kept scrolling even when my hands shook and my eyes blurred. The thread was long. Way too long. Pictures. Voice notes. Jokes about me. One of them said, "He still folds your laundry," followed by 3 crying laughing emojis. She replied, He's like a sweet little assistant I never asked for. There was no hesitation in her tone, no guilt, just cruelty disguised as cleverness. And the sender? Yeah, that Brandon. The same Brandon she toasted earlier that night. The one who made the joke. The one who sat across from me while I smiled and drank overpriced wine and laughed like I belonged. He was the one. Of course he was. I stood in the kitchen, holding the phone like it was radioactive, hearing her laugh from upstairs. She was probably texting him back from her other phone. Maybe even bragging that I still hadn't figured it out. I wish I could say I confronted her right then. That I marched up the stairs and threw the phone down like a courtroom exhibit. But no, I just stood there, staring, trying not to pass out, trying not to scream, trying not to feel everything all at once. Eventually, I did something even worse. I took the phone and put it back exactly where it was. Not because I forgave her, but because I was going to wait. And if she wanted me to obey her, she was about to learn what silence from a sweet little assistant really looked like. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed next to her. Yes, next to her, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing while she snored softly like she didn't just humiliate me in public and cheat behind my back with a man I had just toasted a glass of wine with. Every now and then, she shifted in her sleep, mumbling something about schedules or Friday numbers. I didn't move. I just listened. She had no idea what I knew, and I planned to keep it that way. The next morning, I did what I always did. I brewed the coffee, made her smoothie, fed Max, and cleaned up the dishes before she even came downstairs. When she did, she gave me a peck on the cheek like everything was normal, like I wasn't drowning in betrayal. "You're the best," she mumbled, grabbing the travel mug from my hand. I wanted to scream, but I smiled. That same weak, defeated smile I'd perfected over the last year. She left in a rush, saying something about strategy meetings and new client onboarding. I watched from the window as she backed out of the driveway in her spotless silver sedan, the same one I washed and vacuumed last weekend while she was getting her nails done. My fists clenched. My jaw ached from how hard I was grinding my teeth. That's when I opened my laptop and started digging. I knew Lena was smart, calculated, even, but arrogant. She always underestimated me. That was her weakness. And finally, after years of being pushed down, talked over, and treated like a houseplant, I had something to work with. I started small, pulled our phone records. Nothing from her main number, of course, but the burner? I got the call history. Dozens of outgoing and incoming calls from the same number. Brandon's. I copied it all, screenshotted the messages from the night before, downloaded the images I hadn't been able to erase from my mind. I uploaded everything to a secure drive and created a hidden folder on my personal Google account titled Dinner Party Notes. Just in case. But I wasn't just going to confront her. That would be too easy, too clean. She humiliated me in public, mocked our marriage, mocked me. I wanted her to feel what it was like to have the ground pulled out from under her, slowly. So I started watching her patterns. When she left, when she returned, where she said she was going, who she claimed she was with. I asked soft, seemingly clueless questions. Took mental notes when her answers didn't match the timestamps on her burner phone. 3 days in, she mentioned another client mixer coming up Friday night. Said it would run late. I nodded, like a fool, and offered to have dinner ready when she got home. She smiled, told me I was too good to be true. My stomach twisted. I spent that afternoon prepping dinner like I said I would. Candles, wine, her favorite pasta. But at 7:15 p.m., when she hadn't returned any of my texts, I knew. I wasn't even surprised anymore. So I packed up the food. FedMax took a cab across town, not to her office, to the boutique hotel she once mentioned in her texts. And that's where I saw it with my own eyes. Brandon, Lena, arm in arm, laughing as they checked in at the front desk like it was just another Friday night. They didn't see me, but I saw everything. I took the photo. Just one. Not to confront her. Not yet. I had something better in mind. I was done playing assistant. Now I was the one writing the rules. I stared at that photo for a long time after I took it. Lena in her black blazer, Brandon in that ridiculous scarf he always wore like some budget Bond villain. They looked relaxed, comfortable, like they'd done this before, which, based on her messages, they definitely had. Watching them hand over their IDs to the hotel clerk, laughing like teenagers sneaking out of school, was surreal. I didn't feel rage. Not yet. Just this cold, numb realization that I had finally seen the truth with my own eyes. No more excuses. No more denial. Just evidence. I didn't go home right away. I went to a 24-hour diner across the street, sat in a booth, ordered a coffee I didn't drink, and stared blankly at the laminated menu while their betrayal looped in my head. And that's where the idea started forming. Something small at first, but the longer I sat there, the clearer it became. Lena wanted control. She lived for it. Every inch of our life had been micromanaged by her, from the hand towels in the bathroom to what kind of bread we bought. She curated everything. Appearance was everything. That was her weakness, and I was about to strip that image down layer by layer. I waited until Sunday morning to make the first move. That's when she's always the most tired, hungover from networking wine nights that were just her excuse to disappear. She dragged herself into the kitchen, yawning, asking if we had any almond milk left. I was cheerful, weirdly cheerful. I offered to make her pancakes. She blinked at me like I'd grown a second head, but shrugged and said sure. While she scrolled on her phone at the kitchen island, I said, "Hey, by the way, did you leave your old phone in the laundry room? It was buzzing last night." She froze, just for half a second, but I saw it. Her shoulders tightened. She didn't look up. "No," she said casually. "I must have thrown that one out." Weird. That confirmed everything. She thought it was gone. She had no clue I'd seen it, opened it, and read everything. So I smiled, gave her a pancake, and said, "Yeah, must have been someone else's then." She didn't even respond, just nodded absently, probably already thinking about her next lie. That night, I texted Brandon. From a new number. One he didn't have. I kept it simple. "Your little secret isn't so secret anymore. Enjoy your week, Brandon. It's going to be eventful." No name. No threats. Just enough to rattle him. The next day, Lena came home edgy, jumpier than usual. She accused me of moving her keys, asked if I'd been in her purse, which I absolutely hadn't, and kept checking her phone like she was waiting for something. She was starting to feel it. I needed her off balance. So I did what any spineless, obedient husband would do. I scheduled a dinner reservation at her favorite restaurant. Told her it was to reconnect. Told her I wanted us to talk. She looked at me like I was made of glass. Then she smiled, smug, almost pitying, and said, "That's sweet of you, babe. We probably should." She had no idea that the only reason I chose that specific place was because it had an open balcony that overlooked the valet lot. And at 7:43 p.m. that Friday, while we were sitting at our table, pretending to work through our marriage issues like two civil adults, her burner phone, the one she thought was gone, started ringing. Right in my jacket pocket. Lena's face drained the second she heard the ringtone. That's when I slowly pulled it out, placed it on the white tablecloth between us, and watched her world start to crumble. And I hadn't even said a word yet. For a few seconds, she didn't move. She just stared at the phone like it was a live grenade, her fingers frozen around her wine glass. Her expression went from confusion to horror to calculation, all in under 10 seconds. I didn't say anything. I didn't have to. The moment the ringtone ended, silence dropped over the table like a fog. Finally, she reached for her water, cleared her throat, and gave me the fakest smile I've ever seen. "What's that?" she asked, her voice strained. I leaned back in my chair, took a slow sip of my wine, and replied, "I was about to ask you the same thing. It started ringing while I was organizing the laundry. I thought you said you threw it out." Lena looked like she wanted to leap across the table and smash the phone into the floor, but she couldn't. Not here. Not in a restaurant filled with other professionals, some of whom probably knew her. Image, remember? Always curated. Always clean. "I think it belongs to a friend," she said, and her voice cracked right at the word friend. "I let someone borrow one of my old phones. I totally forgot. That's not mine." I just nodded slowly and said, "Weird. It has a bunch of pictures of you and Brandon in hotel rooms. Kind of a strange coincidence, don't you think?" I watched the color drain from her face. Her lips parted like she wanted to argue, but nothing came out. Her hands trembled slightly as she set down her glass. And for a second, I actually pitied her. For a second. But I wasn't done. I slid a small envelope across the table, thin, no bigger than a receipt. She stared at it like it might bite her. "What's this?" she asked, even though I knew she already had a guess. "Copies of some of your texts. From the cloud backup," I said. "Just a few highlights. My favorite is the one where you called me a desperate puppy while he said you deserved someone who didn't clip coupons. I let that sink in. She didn't even open the envelope. She just stared at it. For a woman who lived by control, she looked like someone who had just watched her entire stock portfolio crash in real time. Then, quietly, she whispered, "So what now? You want to scream? Throw wine in my face? Make a scene?" And that's when I smiled, really smiled, for the first time in a long while. "No," I said calmly. "I want to finish dinner." She blinked. "What?" I picked up my fork, took a bite of risotto, and said, "You're not worth the drama, but you'll feel it soon. Trust me." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't insult her. I didn't give her the satisfaction of watching me break. I just let her stew in that uncomfortable silence, the kind of silence that grows heavier the longer it lingers. She sat stiff as a statue for the rest of the meal, barely touching her food. Her phone buzzed twice. I knew it was Brandon. I'd sent him a message earlier too. Short, simple. "Dinner's on." She's cracking. The best part? I never told her exactly what I planned to do next. I wanted her to imagine it, obsess over it, lose sleep wondering how deep my revenge would cut. Because sometimes, silence is the sharpest knife. And I was just starting to twist it. The next few days were blissfully quiet. Not peaceful, I wouldn't call it that, but quiet in the kind of way that tells you something's about to break. Lena stopped trying to fake things after the dinner. No more little kisses on the cheek. No more, "How was your day?" small talk. She was waiting, watching me like a snake watches a boot hovering over its head. I think it scared her more that I didn't scream, that I didn't throw her stuff out or leave, or even demand answers, that I just carried on like she was already gone. Every morning, I made breakfast. For myself. I stopped making hers. She noticed. She didn't say anything. Every night, I cooked what I wanted. I didn't ask if she was eating. She started ordering takeout more. I kept the receipts. Not because I cared about the food, but because some of them were billed to her corporate card, which was interesting, especially since Brandon wasn't technically her client, at least, not officially. I kept notes. I kept everything. She didn't know about the folder I'd titled Q4 Audit on our shared Google Drive. Inside it, I was building a timeline, not just of the affair, but of every lie she told tied to her job, our finances, our shared accounts. It was meticulous. It was boring, and it was going to destroy her. Then came the text from her sister. That's when I knew it had started working. Her sister, Claire, texted me out of the blue. "Hey, just checking in. Lena seemed off lately. Everything okay between you two?" I smiled so hard it hurt. Lena was unraveling. She wasn't telling anyone anything, but her panic was leaking through the cracks. Probably snapping at Claire. Probably not sleeping. She always did hate not knowing what cards were left in someone's hand. And I was holding all of them now. So I played along. "We're good. Just working through a few things." That was it. No drama. Just enough to let the silence keep her up at night. The next night, I stayed late at a friend's place. Not to talk, just to be gone. When I came home, she was sitting in the dark kitchen, arms crossed, wine glass untouched in front of her. "You can't keep doing this," she said. I acted confused. Doing what? This quiet thing. The mind games. If you're going to leave, then leave. If you're going to fight, then fight. But this? It's cruel. I looked at her for a long moment and said, "You told me to obey you or start packing. I'm just finally following orders." That shut her up. She looked at me like she didn't recognize me, and maybe she didn't. Maybe she only ever loved me when I was beneath her, orbiting around her life like some obedient little moon. But now I was the one in control. She tried to reach out, literally, placed her hand on mine. "Can we just reset?" I pulled my hand away, gently, quietly. "No drama. I think it's a little late for that, Lena." She didn't answer, just stared down at the table. For the first time since I met her, I saw actual fear in her face. Not guilt, not sadness, fear. And that's when I realized something. She wasn't afraid of losing me. She was afraid of losing the image. Her perfect career, her perfect reputation, her perfect control over everything. And I was about to take all of it away, one document at a time. She just didn't know how far I was willing to go. Not yet. The morning it all began to collapse, she didn't even notice. Lena rushed out of the house like usual, heels clicking, coffee in hand, spewing half-sentences about quarterlies and client meetings. Her phone buzzed twice before she even backed out of the driveway. She was too distracted to see the subtle shift in the air. I waited exactly 4 minutes after she left before I hit send. I'd scheduled the email the night before. A full PDF packet, time-stamped messages, screenshots from the burner phone, hotel check-in photos, and a detailed comparison of her company expense reports cross-referenced with the dinners and overnight consultations that weren't just fraudulent. They were explicitly personal. The recipient? Her firm's compliance officer. I'd met him once at their holiday party. He barely remembered my name, but I remembered his. I wasn't out for blood. I wasn't going to torch her career with lies or exaggerations. I didn't need to. The truth was worse than anything I could have invented. She hadn't just cheated on me. She'd cheated her company. She'd cheated the system. And she thought no one would notice, because no one ever questioned Lena. By noon, the first cracks appeared. She came home early. Like, way early. No warning. Just stormed through the front door with her sunglasses still on and threw her bag on the floor. I stayed seated on the couch, TV off, laptop open. She stood there in silence for a moment, then said, "You did something." I looked at her like she'd lost her mind. "What are you talking about?" "You know exactly what I mean," she snapped. "Brandon got called in. He said they pulled his company records. There's an investigation." I raised my eyebrows. "Weird. What does that have to do with me?" She stared at me. Really stared. For once, all that cold confidence she wore like armor, it wasn't there. Just a flicker of panic and the deep, bitter realization that I wasn't bluffing. That maybe, just maybe, I'd been a lot more dangerous quiet than I ever was loud. Then came the call. Her work phone buzzed. She answered, stepped into the other room, and closed the door, but she forgot I'd repaired the vents in the hallway. Her voice carried through the ductwork. Every word. "We're just colleagues." "No, that's not." "No, I didn't falsify anything. Those receipts were." "Look, this feels like a personal attack. I've given this company 7 years. I didn't need to hear the rest. I knew what was happening. They weren't firing her. Not yet. But the audit had started. And Brandon? He'd already cracked. I could picture him in some office right now, throwing her under the bus to save himself. When she came back into the room, she looked pale. Not makeup pale. Shaken pale. She tried one last time. Sat beside me on the couch, hands clasped, voice lowered. "Why are you doing this? You want revenge? Fine. But this? This affects everything. My career. My reputation." I stared at her. At the woman who once stood at a rooftop party and laughed at me like I was a house bet. At the woman who looked me dead in the eyes and said, "Obey me or start packing." I didn't raise my voice. "You built a house of glass, Lena." I just pulled the blinds open. She said nothing. I stood, walked to the kitchen, and poured myself a glass of water with my hands still steady. That's when I heard her whisper something I didn't expect. "I never thought you'd fight back." And there it was. That's what this had always been about. She didn't cheat because she was in love with someone else. She did it because she didn't believe I could or would ever stand up for myself. Because I was sweet, useful, safe. Well, not anymore. And the final blow was still coming. Because I hadn't told her yet that someone else had gotten the same folder I sent to her company. Her father. The one man whose opinion she actually cared about. And he called me that evening. Her father called just after 6 p.m. I was halfway through reheating leftovers when his name lit up my phone screen. I hadn't expected him to reach out. I'd only sent him the folder because I wanted someone in her life to really see her for who she'd become. Not the polished professional, not the brilliant daughter, not the golden girl who could do no wrong. I wanted the man who raised her to know what she'd done to the man she claimed to love. I hesitated, then answered. He didn't yell. He didn't even sound angry. Just tired. Defeated. "Thank you for sending that," he said quietly. I wish I could say I was surprised, but I've seen flashes of this in her before. I just hoped she'd outgrown it. There was a long pause. I didn't know what to say. Then he added, "Whatever you decide to do next, I understand. And I'm sorry. Truly." That was the moment I knew it was over. Not just the marriage, the hold she had over everything. Her father had always been the last domino. If even he couldn't defend her anymore, there was nothing left to protect. No more shields. No more illusions. Lena didn't come home that night. She sent a short message around 11 p.m. "Staying at Claire's. I need time." I didn't reply. I just stared at the message, set the phone down, and let the silence settle over me. Not the sharp silence I'd weaponized against her. A softer one. A quiet that felt like peace. The next morning, I packed a bag. I didn't leave in a rage. No drama. No shouting. I just walked through our house, room by room, and took what mattered. A few photos. My design books. Max's leash. I left the rest. Let her live in the empty shell she built. Let her sit with the ghost of everything she tried to control. And then I left her a note. Just one line, written in clean black ink, sitting where her coffee mug usually went. You told me to start packing. So I did. I moved in with a friend for a few weeks. Took time off. Focused on my freelance work. The weirdest part? The moment I left her, everything got easier. Clients started responding. A design I'd submitted months ago got picked up by a small tech startup. Max started eating better. I started sleeping again. Real, deep sleep. The kind where you don't wake up dreading the next morning. And then, about a month later, I met someone. Her name's Elise. We met at a bookstore. I dropped a stack of design magazines, and she helped me pick them up. We got coffee. She actually asked questions about my work. She listened. No control games. No power plays. Just conversation. It's early. I'm not rushing it. But for the first time in years, I feel like I'm not living in someone else's shadow. Lena, last I heard, is still under review at her firm. Brandon took a leave of absence. Her father isn't speaking to her. She hasn't reached out again, and I think she knows better than to try. She broke something in me, but I rebuilt it. Not harder, not colder, just stronger. And sometimes, when people ask why I seem so calm, why I don't get rattled anymore, I just smile and say, because I've already walked through a storm I wasn't supposed to survive. And I came out the other side clean.